Hello and welcome to the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce Influencer Series. You know, our Influencer Series is a spin-off of our well-received Log In and Learn web series. My name is Richard Pettis. I'm President and CEO of the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. The Influencer Series is an intimate, thought-provoking discussion with prominent community leaders about the crucial issues facing San Antonio right now. Our goal is to elevate policy discussions and keep our community informed, and it has never been more necessary than today. Today's guest, and I'm so excited, is my great friend, partner in crime for a long time, Tuesdaé Knight, President and CEO of SAGE. And SAGE, of course, is San Antonio Growth for the East Side. SAGE has been deeply involved in supporting the East Side, supporting economic development, just all things East Side. SAGE is there, and now Tuesday's been leading that organization and doing wonderful work. In the midst of our city's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Tuesdaé has been an active leader in ensuring small businesses get the resources they need to weather this storm, and she's been a champion of equitable recovery efforts. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Tuesdaé. Tuesdaé Knight was named President and CEO of SAGE in December of 2018 and has more than 15 years of not-for-profit experience, working for companies such as FedEx, the YMCA, and of course, most recently here at the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce. Tuesdaé is a dynamic leader. She's developed a forward-thinking vision, and she's just a good friend, and she works hard, and she's fantastic. Tuesdaé holds a BA from Tennessee State University and an MBA from Texas A&M International in Laredo, Texas, and is fluent in Spanish. SAGE's main responsibilities are to advocate for the citizens and businesses of the East Side and to champion small business development. So SAGE works closely with a whole bunch of different businesses and community groups and elected officials and chambers like us. And their work includes launching an equitable neighborhood development plan, awarding storefront grants to local businesses for facade improvements, and holding regular East Side business briefings for nonprofit symposiums, to provide progressive, inclusive, and equitable solutions to East Side challenges. Tuesdaé, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Richard. I hate that I'm not there to hug you in person, but no one can do that anymore.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm just thrilled that you've moved to SAGE and that you continue to grow as a leader. And so we'll get into all of that, but I'll suffice it to say that I'm very proud of you and your work. We have a very close relationship that we developed for many years here at the Chamber, and now you're taking your personal career to new levels and new heights. And so I want you to know that you just continue to shine. I've always called you one of my stars, and but you're not mine anymore. Now you belong to this community. So
I'm still yours, Richard. I'm still yours.
Well, thanks. All right, so let's get started. So here's several questions. So tell us about your educational background, because I think it's interesting that you actually had a stint in Laredo, Texas. And how did you become the president of SAGE? Tell us all about how that happened.
Yeah, I don't know. No, I'm kidding. So, whenever I think about and I get asked that question, it's really interesting because you would think that it came from, my educational background and all those experiences, and it really didn't. It just kind of happened. And I think that it kind of happened naturally because it should have. From my education in San Diego, California, going to an intercultural school where it was bilingual and I learned Spanish, to growing up in San Diego, moving to Tennessee. I lived in South America for a year as an exchange student. And so that kind of gave me a different perspective as well. And then coming back, I always knew that it was something that I wanted to do, was to give back. So I grew up with it. My parents instilled that in me at a really early age. And then I really got my foothold in this at the Chamber of Commerce. Working there for 8 years and being able to work under your tutelage and understanding what the business community needed, what San Antonio fabric looked like. I really grew that there at the Chamber. And so it was difficult going from working with the entire city with the Chamber to now working on a small part of town, but it wasn't so. It was people that work on the East Side don't necessarily live on the East Side. People that live on the East Side don't necessarily work on the East Side. So I still get to do a lot of work around the city, and I love it. And it's all kind of just come together just beautifully.
So tell me, how'd you get from San Diego to Tennessee to Texas?
So it's so funny. In San Diego, I was an athlete. Played basketball. I had every scholarship available to go play basketball in California, but I didn't want that. I wanted to attend an HBCU, which Tennessee State University is. My mother's from Knoxville, Tennessee, so it was close enough to home, but I knew that I wanted to be in the majority for once in my life. And that's really what HBCUs provide,
Sure.
is they provide you an opportunity to be around other minorities. And so that's what I did for 4 years. And I wouldn't have changed it for anything in the world, but it was great. So from San Diego to Tennessee, then Tennessee to Uruguay, Uruguay to Laredo, and then Laredo to Houston, Houston, San Antonio. And this is my home.
Yay. All right. Well, that's fantastic. Well, we really appreciate the fact that you've always had the desire to learn new things and go to meet new people and be parts of different cultures and experiences. And of course, that's what you did here at the Chamber. You opened up new avenues, brought in a whole different clientele, if you will, of small minority women-owned businesses, which continues to be our goal here. And you threw the doors wide open and did a great job. And of course, you expanded our ambassador program and just began our travels to international countries and just a whole bunch of good things. So you continue to open doors and we appreciate it very, very much.
Well, thank you. And Richard, I wish I would have had a pearl necklace to wear for you, but I don't. As I told you, I'm not at home,
Yes.
but that's an inside joke for all of you that are watching
Yes.
one of our travels. Richard
That's
has
right.
great taste in jewelry, by the way.
Thanks, Tuesdaé. Thanks, Tuesdaé. So here's another question. So Sage operates within a 22-mile footprint. How many businesses are in the footprint? How many residents? And how does Sage engage both of these could be diverse communities?
Yeah, certainly. Well, let me explain a little bit about how our footprint was created.
Okay.
Through the Promise Zone designation that happened in 2014, that really gave the east side of San Antonio a lot of federal recognition, meaning that we received grant funding, we received a lot of support to do
Now,
a lot
Tuesdaé,
of.
let me stop you there. Was that a HUD program? Was that Promise
That was a
HUD?
HUD program. It was actually under the Obama administration, and it was
Okay.
a designation so that communities of color, communities that were disenfranchised, disinvested in, would get some type of support from the federal government. It was a 10-year designation that happened in 2014. It ends in 2024, but it really was a great program. And thankfully, with our mayor at the time, Mayor Castro, moving on to be the HUD secretary, it really did help us get that designation. So
Wonderful.
that designation is what created our 22 square mile footprint. So although we are San Antonio for Growth on the east side, we technically manage those 22 miles. And in those 22 miles, there's a little under 2,100 businesses, mostly small to medium. And there's about 89,500 or so, give or take, citizens.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so tell me about the diversity of businesses. Is it service? Is it, manufacturing? Tell me a little bit about that mix.
Well, mostly it's small to medium. So we've got lots of restaurants. We've got lots of small retail. The largest, of course, is our dear Spurs. They're
Yes.
exactly.
Go Spurs, go.
I was right there with you. And so the Spurs are there, but we have other entities. We have American Red Cross, UniFirst. We have some big, but most of them are small to medium-sized businesses, all mostly under 10 employees. And what those businesses provide are services. And so that's why our work is so important, especially right now with those type of businesses that we have on the east side.
Sure. So now with COVID, what has been the impact? What have you seen as the impact to these small businesses in particular?
Well, it's really tough. Let me clarify. It's tough for everyone.
Sure.
But specifically on the east side, being that they are small and medium-sized businesses, the funding just isn't there. The foot traffic isn't walking in the doors. How many times did I drive past in the east side and see a restaurant and say, "Oh, I haven't been there. Let me stop." People aren't doing that anymore. So a lot of the support that people just found by happening to drive past or hear about one of our small businesses, that's how they received those people walking in the door and people getting support. But that's not happening anymore. So what we're finding is that all of our small and medium-sized businesses are hurting. And they're hurting because, again, that funding, the several rounds that we had didn't apply to them. or they didn't have access. So access to funding and access to capital really was a difficult thing for our small and medium-sized businesses.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So there's, of course, as you well know, national attention drawn to disparities of access for resources. The Payroll Protection Program, and the ability for small minority businesses to grab some of that money has been a challenge, as you've said. Can you tell us about how the businesses on the East Side were impacted, and how Sage, has adjusted to help them deal with this terrible crisis?
Right. So when it first happened, we applied for the PPP pretty early on. And thankfully, because we do have a relationship with our bank, we were able to get that funding pretty quickly.
So you as Sage?
Us as Sage,
Got
yes.
it.
So we applied through our bank, Frost Bank, great partners of ours. And so really early on, when we were starting to talk to people, we realized that other small businesses may or may not have that same type of relationship. So what we did early on was we decided that our back office program, where we would help people with financial matters, grant assistance writing, things like that, that we were going to pivot those services in order to support businesses applying for PPP. So since we successfully received it, what better way to help people? And so since then, we've helped more than 50 businesses apply.
Yay.
And we had to churn our program of support into this support type of service. But we had to pivot in so many different ways because we're a community engagement organization, very similar to the chamber. A lot of face-to-face, a lot of getting involved with things in person, and we couldn't do that anymore. So we had to figure out how to pivot. And our newsletter now is just chock full of information from our partners, from things that we're seeing in the city, resources and opportunities, just so that we can get that information out to our community in a way that we couldn't do anymore face to face.
Sure. Well, I get your newsletter, and it's very well done, by the way. So thank you for sending that out. And it gives me an opportunity to snapshot on what y'all are doing there, right? Which helps inform what we're doing here, kind of for the larger community. So tell me a little bit about your staff. How big is your staff? What do they do? You talked about how you pivoted some of the folks. What are the pieces of the puzzle that you all take care of over there?
Well, we're a small entity. We have 6 full-time staff, including myself, and we're very fortunate because we partner with the city of San Antonio in that we have a VISTA program. It's called the AmeriCorps VISTA. They're basically, they're domestic Peace Corps, if you would say. Mm-hmm. And so we have these brilliant young minds that are working with us through the federal government. But total, we have about 10 people, and they have done an amazing job. We have not stopped working, not one day since this happened. We fortunately started early on getting technology for everyone and kind of moving things over from being in the office to being at home. And so my staff has been working really hard on, again, changing up the direction of the newsletter, changing up our events and programs, just making sure that we are able to still provide supportive services, but just in a different way.
So what are some of the projects that your Vista Corps are doing?
Well, initially, what they were responsible for was going to all of the neighborhood association meetings, doing the community engagement. One of our Vistas is in charge of that beautiful newsletter that we are putting out now. Another one of our Vistas is in charge of social media, so she's doing a great job. And then we have a couple other ones that are really working behind the scenes as far as grant funding and grant writing, supporting our community and those citizens that are needing to come in and get information. So we still have them and doing the same work that they did before. It's just a little bit different.
Sure. Good. Well, that's a great opportunity for them to hands-on learn and really understand the challenges of a community like San Antonio, a diverse community like San Antonio, and prepares them for whatever that next stage of their career might be. So thank you for undertaking that. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
So shifting gears again, let's talk about workforce development. What kinds of workforce training programs does Sage promote? And can you tell us about the workforce needs among the businesses that Sage works with?
Well, we really support any type of workforce development. But again, because we're functioning in this footprint, we really partner heavily with SAISD, St. Philip's College. We work with ETSI, so Alamo Colleges, the Eastside Education Training Center. And so workforce development is really big for us. We really try to focus on economic development, workforce and education. We tiptoed into housing last year because we know it's all tied together. And then now with specifically what's going on with financial help. So one of the things that we saw where we had to again pivot was working with these businesses with these grant programs. Thankfully, Sage was a partner with the Westside Development Corporation, Centro, the North Chamber, and Southside First to partner so that we could help these small and medium-sized businesses. So we assisted the Bexar County Strong program with powered by Lift Fund, and we also assisted with the city program that is the City Recovery and Resiliency Program. So as a supportive agency, we're working with these businesses, but in that work, we're finding out where the discrepancies lie and where they're the line of the work that they can do and how forward we can go. Because right now, it's giving these businesses a fish. It's not teaching them how to fish. Sure. And so what we're trying to do is to get that financial empowerment, financial planning, to try to get them educated on what they need. Because again, Richard, some of the things that we found working with some of these businesses don't have separate bank accounts. They don't have the relationships with their banks. They don't have the appropriate paperwork that they need for some of this funding. So we need to go back to the basics and give them what they need in order to keep them supported going forward.
Excellent, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about housing. You talked about housing. Tell me about the housing stock in the 22 square mile area, and what are some of the projects y'all are working for in the realm of housing?
Well, right before all of this started, we were really working with a lot of agencies and a lot of developers that were working on housing. But, anytime you talk about housing on the east side, you have to bring up the G word, right? Gentrification. Sure. And you have to bring up what's going on. So east side doesn't own that problem. That's actually all over the country. But sure. But housing stock is a really hard thing. The reason why the Promise Zone became the Promise Zone is because the average income is about $29,000 per family. So what does that look like for housing? That means that there can only afford a certain amount of housing because only a third of your income should go to housing. So right. That became an issue. So we have to have affordable housing stock. That is an issue. And because of some of these federal designated dollars that came into the east side, now it's attractive for people to move in. So that means housing prices go up. That means that people have less options and people are having to move out. And so that's an issue as well. But unfortunately, housing isn't our biggest issue right now. We have so many other ones that we're focusing on, again, with economic development, workforce, and education. But thankfully, we're partnered with the city in their emergency housing assistance program. So we're able to help these citizens that need assistance paying their mortgage, paying their utilities. And again, the need is right now. So we can look on the horizon later, but we want to make sure that people can stay in their homes today.
Of course, makes sense, makes sense. So one of the, I guess, the way people look at the east side, it's, crime, there's a lot of crime and all that. Tell me about what really is the east side. And, there's a stigma, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. That stigma, like on the south side where I come from, a lot of crime, Tell me about what's really on the ground in the Promise Zone.
Yeah, well, the stigma is just that. It is a stigma. The demographics of the east side aren't too dissimilar from San Antonio. So our Hispanic population is about 63%. And so, in the city, it's not too different. Yep. However, the African American demographic in the city of San Antonio is about 6 to 7%. It fluctuates just a little bit. On the east side, it's 27%. And so that is why it is seen as the black side of town, because there's a large population. But also historically, the east side has so much rich history from, musicians and actors and people coming into San Antonio. When they would come to the east side of San Antonio. So a lot of rich history, a lot of cultural differences that are celebrated on the east side. But again, you have the stigma that it's unsafe, that there's not anywhere good to go to eat or to live. And that's unfortunate because, first of all, it is an amazing side of town. The people there are as kind as you can find. But again, that's San Antonio. And that's not just on the east side. But thankfully, speaking about the east side, we can talk about that fabric being amazing as it is. But one of the things that I say all the time is, unfortunately, people will gravitate towards the bad side. If there's a bad story, if it's something that happens south of Austin, it's, oh, something happened on the east side of San Antonio. And you're like, wait, no. So it's really difficult. And we're working on changing that stereotype, but that's something that's a little bit beyond us. And all we can do is provide, promote, and support all of the beauty that the east side is.
So, trying to tell the narrative of what really the East Side is, how much of your time do you spend doing that? I mean, you as a leader, you as the head of Sage, tell me about how do you do that? How do you convince people that, hey, this place is just as good as any other place? Come visit, come check, put some roots down here, that sort of thing.
Talking and screaming it from the rafters is what I do. My team, they laugh at me. And again, this is a remnant of working for Richard Bettis at the chamber, is you just don't take a break. You participate in every single thing that's offered to you, because having a seat at the table means that there's somebody speaking up for that side of town. So I sit on task force after task force. I sit on program after program, board after board if I can, because if there's somebody screaming at the table, then that means at least there's a voice to be heard. So I have definitely taken your lead and try to just be as engaged in everything that I can, because the more voices we have, and even having, again, a seat at the table, we're allowed to share that story and the beauty of what the East Side is.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I know you, and I know you're doing it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even from where you're at right now, miles away from home, you're still getting after it. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
So tell me, what happens after 2024? You said the designation was up until 2024. What happens after?
Well, the official designation ends, but it also depends on who's in the office and who is in the administration at the time. Just like every other policy, we're hoping that we get an extension. We're hoping that we get more support. There's only 22 promise zones actually in the United States. Some of those include rural areas as well. There's 13 city ones, but we're hoping to expand that. But also by 2024, we're hoping that the need isn't there.
Sure.
We're hoping that these areas that were, again, disenfranchised and heavily underfunded don't continue to happen. But with what's going on right now, I think it's fantastic because it's shining a spotlight on the thing that we've been fighting for this long of a time, for people who are, underfunded, underutilized, all those things that we talked about, is now there's a spotlight on it, and people are saying that it's not just one side of town. There's people that are in need all over the city and all over the country, for that matter.
Sure. So tell me, let's say I'm hearing about Sage for the first time. I'm tuning into this webinar. I'm thinking, hey, how do I get involved? What can I do to help Tuesday Night and Sage do their work? How can I lift my hand up and say, hey, call on me?
Well, we're really engaged with our community. And so having the support and the supportive services that our community engages in is really helpful for us, because we have considered ourselves basically a conduit of information. And so as long as we can get those partners helping us, we also work with all of our businesses and our financial institutions about providing services. So if you have any type of supportive services you're interested in sharing, we're happy to share those as well. We are working on a lot of different programs to make sure that we're getting out into the community. But again, unfortunately, we can't do the block walking. We can't do those type of things. So we're just really, again, trying to pivot our support. One of the programs that we offered that we're working on now is called our Nonprofit Symposium. Last year and previous years, it was working with our businesses to get information regarding funding, regarding supportive services, financial programs, whatever. Now we need more of it. Now we need more businesses to come together to provide those services. And so that's a big deal. Finding out which businesses are hiring, that's important. Finding out who is offering any type of supportive resources, because again, if people are finding it in one place, they can at least access it. One of the problems that we have had in the East Side, again, city altogether, is access to information. So, right, we have access to information that we can get from our partners. That's even better. And the fact that they can find it on our website and in our newsletter is great. So really, we try to partner with any and everybody that we can to get that information out, but also to make sure that we're providing that to our community.
Excellent. So you talked about the businesses, you talked about, the folks that live there. Tell me about some of the cultural assets. You have some really cool, unique things that sprang forth from the African American community that are right in your, in the area that you oversee. Tell us a little bit about some of those jewels.
Oh, there's so many. If you talk about the restaurants, because as you know, you and I are foodies, right?
Yes,
So we
yes.
love great food. We have some really great restaurants that have been there for years. And so one, there's the food part because that's part of culture.
Sure.
Then we have the actual built environment. So we've got amazing places like the Spire, for instance. The Spire, which is the church that's directly behind Sunset Station, right along that corridor, was one of the first African American churches.
I did not know that.
It is now an event space, but it was one of the first African American churches. We have so many places that unfortunately may not be in existence anymore. G.J. Sutton is gone, but the history still lies in a lot of those places. We have some of the first African American pharmacies, some of the first African American libraries. I mean, there is just so much really rich history, and it's not just African American. Again, we're 63% Hispanic, so there's a lot of culture on the east side, and it is amazing to be a part of, and it is amazing to see. So another project that Sage is working on is we're working with the city on a historical marker project in order to really stake the claim on some of these cultural beauties that are on the east side. So we're going to be working with them. Those will show up soon, and then anyone could walk them and see those places and read some about the history and the culture of the east side.
Excellent. Well, and you and I have both participated in the Buffalo Soldiers annual commemoration of those who perished, Buffalo Soldiers that we have buried on the east side in our national cemeteries. And that's an amazing cultural asset to have, and being able to participate in those kinds of things is really, it's just so rich and so exciting and so prideful to be there and to see that the legacy continues, right?
Absolutely. That's actually was the first entryway into the Buffalo Soldiers with you here in San Antonio, because I didn't even know. And I think that's the problem, is that, a lot of this information isn't shared. It's kind of held closely. And so that's the hard part. But I love going to that event. I love going to it with you. But you think about the other things that we have that are historical, right? The largest Martin Luther King march in the country. And it culminates there at the YMCA, the Davis Scott YMCA, which in essence is also history. It was named after two African American men. So a lot of rich history going on there. And again, we are just proud to be a really close neighbor to downtown because we have so much history that goes in between. But when you look at the line, that's where the redlining started. That's where, the space of segregation started. But we're opening those doors and we're opening those corridors and changing the dynamic, but still keeping our rich history.
Excellent, excellent. So we're coming to a close. So let's close out with an aspirational question. That pandemic has brought about a new level of collaboration among city, county, business, education, community leaders. From your perspective as the leader of SAGE, what do you see as a community need to get right for our city to recover from this pandemic?
Well, we've been working with all of, again, city and county on those funding opportunities. So obviously funding is important. That's bar none, because a business can't operate without that. Sure. But going back to what I said earlier was that financial education. Not everybody needs to go to college. Not everybody wants to go to college.
Right.
There are certifications that can be had. There is a plethora of opportunities, but having that access is really what we need. And so it's access to opportunity. It's access to education, a fair and equitable education, and then offering workforce opportunities. We heard today, Richard, on our call that there's 160,000 people that are unemployed right now in our city. Isn't
that almost mind-boggling?
I cannot imagine. And so the need is just there, but now it's on paper, right? Because before, if it didn't affect you or if it wasn't in your circle, you didn't see it. Now you can see everything. So pie in the sky, what I would love to hear is that these businesses get financial support first, and then also they get the education so that they can sustain themselves after this. Because if this ever happens again, God forbid, we want to make sure that these businesses are able to still sustain themselves, to stay viable, and to provide the services. Because if the small business goes away, that is a whole nother issue. So I would love to see the education continue, and that once all the CARES Act funding and the federal dollars go away, that we're still supporting these businesses. And I know the city is working on that, and I know a lot of other entities are as well. And we just want to make sure that we say this is really important.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Tuesdaé, spoken very well as always. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us in this conversation. As I said, you're a star, and you belong to this community, and you're doing great work. And we know that as you continue to lead Sage into new realms and new opportunities, that you're going to bring people and businesses with you. So again, I say thank you, and I appreciate you joining us.
Richard, again, this wasn't, when I was asked to do this, I said, this isn't work. This is me talking to one of my dear friends who I respect so much. This chamber has done so much to the community and for the community. And so I just really appreciate your work. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about Sage's work and what we're working on.
Thank you, Tuesdaé. Stay safe and be careful in your travels, and say hello to your significant other.
I certainly will. You do the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, you take care. So before we close, I want to thank our viewers for tuning in today to watch our Influencer series. As you all know, this is a series that is important, and as a result of our input, we wanted to do this for you because you all said you wanted to hear from influencers throughout the community. And so this is to learn something new, to stay connected, and influencers and folks that are moving the city community forward. So with that, I'd like to say, please visit our Rapid Response website to learn more. And lastly, I want to close by reminding everybody about the 2020 census. In fact, Tuesdaé and I are on various committees promoting filling out the 2020 census. It's so very important that we fill it out. Time is getting close to finishing it. We're talking about $300 million in a year in federal funding. Please go out. If you haven't filled out the census, fill it out. Go to 2020census.gov. It's the easiest thing you've ever done, and it really means a lot. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, we say thank you. Until next time, be safe, be kind, and be healthy. And from all of us here at the Chamber, have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.